Apparently, it's normal in some countries for parents to start charging their children rent as soon as they're kind of like early teenagers or so. And as an American, when I saw someone post about that, maybe like on Reddit or something, I was actually shocked because while each individual's experience is obviously different depending on their family, the typical thing that happens in the United States is kind of the idea of like you live here rent free until you're 18, and then we kind of kick you out. Or maybe they still support you a little bit while you're in college or something like that. But the idea is until you're 18, you kind of live here rent free. Well, in the UK and other parts of Europe, probably, I'm not exactly sure, a lot of people actually start charging their kids rent when they're teenagers. And at first, I was shocked by that, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I was like, is that kind of cruel, or is there something good about that? And the more I thought about this, I actually think it's really cool because it teaches those children that they can't just keep all of their salary and one third or one fourth of it is going to go to your expenses like rent and utilities and stuff like that. So it kind of teaches them those patterns and habits while they're still living with their parents. And so it's not just for like parents to get some money to help out with the bills, it's just teaching those kids that responsibility because they're not kids anymore, they're transitioning into adulthood. I think in the United States we kind of have an idea of keeping people young as long as possible and not kind of having those adult responsibilities and not adulting. And we kind of think it's bad to be an adult and we kind of try to delay it as long as we possibly can. And I used to work at a university. I think a lot of students who are 18 to 22 who come to a university are not very prepared for being an adult. And they're still in that transition mode the entire time they're in university, which is fine. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I think this idea of charging children rent is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's probably good to give someone more and more responsibilities as they get older and older so they can build up and learn those adult skills over time instead of just kind of being thrown into the fire after they graduate from college and kind of sinking or swimming in that adult world. So I think this actually prepares people for real life, and I actually like it the more I think about it. However, also sometimes parents can still go too far, and I want to read this interesting story from The Sun, and it talks about how a woman charges her teen daughter £3,000 per year in rent, and they send it to her older brother because he's in university. So the younger daughter is 17, and she works, and she makes a salary of about £12,000 per year. And because of this idea of charging rent once you have a job, they are charging her £3,000 a year in rent, which is one fourth of what she makes. However, her older brother, who's a year older, doesn't work, and he chose to go to university. So while he's there and he's not working, they're still supporting him. And so that means that they're taking her money that she earned, that she's paying them in rent, and they're sending some or all of that to her older brother who's not working because he's at university. And so this kind of system can also create these kind of problems, which I also think is interesting. So let's read a little bit of this from The Sun. They say, a mom of 3 has revealed she charges her teenage daughter £3,000 in rent and spends it on her older child. Posting on Mumsnet, the anonymous woman explained that her 17-year-old daughter is giving away 25% of her £12,000 wage while living at home doing an apprenticeship. And I wanted to stop here and also say that in American culture right now, a lot of people who are adults are returning to their parents' house, and some of them are paying rent and some of them are not. So actually in the United States, it's very interesting that people are going back to living with their parents because they have a lot of student debt, or for some reason they can't afford to buy a house or even pay rent for an apartment because maybe it's expensive where they live and they want to save money. So a lot of people are returning, and even a lot of adults in the United States who are living with their parents are not necessarily still paying any rent. So I think that's interesting as well. Let's continue. But her son, who's 18, is off to university, and his parents will be sending him money towards his living costs, as his maintenance grant only covers 2/3 of his rent. So the mom added, we'll be in a position of taking money from our dear daughter and sending money to our dear son, which has totally changed our family dynamic. I'm really conscious of causing resentment from our dear daughter, who already suffers a bit with middle child syndrome and jealousy. If you've been in this situation, what did you do? She asked. I want dear daughter to contribute for lots of reasons, none of which go away just because dear son now needs 3 more years of support at university. So I wanted to read this because it's very interesting how this parent is thinking about it. And I'm not saying that everyone in the UK or Europe or wherever they do this thinks this way, but her idea is there's a lot of good reasons why she's charging rent, and they don't go away just because the other child needs support while they're in school. So I think that's very interesting. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse than kind of the general thing we do in the US. I'm not sure. So then she goes on to say, we had long conversations when she started work about contributing to the bills and food and how important it is to get used to not having your whole monthly wage to keep right from the start. I'd rather not go back on that. I think that's healthy. Like when you mow lawns when you're in high school, you just keep all that cash. Or when you get an allowance, you kind of keep it all. And that's not realistic with what's going to happen when you have a job and you're 35. So I think this is a really cool way to prepare people for what's really going to happen later. And it's painful when you make your own money. When you work for a company, they take your taxes out and you kind of get your final paycheck at the end, and it's satisfying. When you start your own business and you work for yourself, you have to write all those checks yourself to the government, to the insurance company, etc. And so that's very painful when you earn that money and you have to give so much of it away. And charging your kids a little bit of rent and utility money when they're growing up is actually a good way to prepare them for that, I think. And in this particular situation, however, even many people who are used to that idea are saying that they're horrified, calling her mean and unfair, harsh, shocking, and generally not cool. And one of the people who responded wrote, an apprenticeship wage at that age is very, very low, and I'd consider her still in a form of education. I think funding one at university whilst taking money off a low-wage apprentice is pretty not cool, frankly. A second one said, I'd also be furious if I was handing up money and my older brother was scot-free and being supported just because he chose to go to university. Lots of people work and are in education at the same time. An apprenticeship is also a form of education, and you're in danger of placing your son higher in the pecking order in your dear daughter's eyes just because he chose a third-level institution. You can't teach one responsibility and not the other. So a third respondent said that 25% seems harsh. I don't know how I'd feel if I was in her shoes. I'd expect dear brother to get a job and pay his own rent for a start. And another person said that I'm blown away that you're charging when she's on 12K pounds a year. It seems really mean and unfair. They've got plenty of time in life to pay rent and mortgages and bills. And another person said, oh my God, I can't believe people actually charge their child rent. Wow, shocked me. That might be someone who's not from the UK, or maybe not everyone there is into this idea, just some people, I'm not sure. I actually have no idea. And lastly, another mom wrote that if dear daughter is on an apprenticeship scheme, you should not be charging her for anything. As it's not a full-time job and she isn't even 18, I would consider that like being at school. I don't see why dear son can't get a part-time job. And so there's disagreements with this even within places that do it. Who knows when the best time is to start charging rent? Should you wait till your child has a full-time job? Should you take some of their part-time wages if they're still living with you? Should you wait till they're 18 and then do it? I don't think anyone has this figured out perfectly, but I do think it's a great idea to start giving a child more and more responsibility over time that's kind of appropriate for their age level. So if they're 14, maybe they should start filling out their forms when you go to the doctor's office or at school. I'm not sure what the age is for that. But I think it's probably a good idea to start gradually giving children adult life skills over time. I have no idea when that is or what that looks like, but I definitely know that different cultures have different ideas about this. And it was very interesting for me when I heard about the fact that in some places it's common practice to charge your children rent while they're still living with you and aren't even 18 yet. So this kind of blew me away, and I wanted to bring it up for you as well. You can join me every morning as you're getting ready for work or school. I post a new video every Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern for you, and you can kind of consider it a little bit of intellectual dark chocolate that you can enjoy with your morning coffee if that's something that you're into. And so I really hope you enjoyed this video and that I will see you in the next one as well. I'm Jim Wolf, and I'll talk to you later.